And Suze, I mean, you've had so much contact with the nasties as well as some of the better products in your own research, because you as a holistic stylist and a hairdresser have been exposed to heaps of chemicals on a daily basis over extended hours for years. I mean, perming solutions and colorings and everything. I can only imagine what you've gone through. Would you like to talk a little bit about your background, darling?
Well, sure, thank you. You know, like Mel said, our industry really is created with illusion in mind. So, as a young person, when I would go to get my hair cut, it started there with not having a good communication with the stylist and not speaking about the hairline. So, when I was given a scholarship to go to beauty school, I really couldn't imagine that I would become a hairdresser. But it was really one of the best fits for me because I'm artistic, I like to talk a lot, and I don't like to follow rules. And so that led me down a trail to opening my salon when I was 21 years old. And by then it was 1985. Now, our industry is interesting because it tends to sit in judgment and say, well, we have superior products than are at the grocery store. But when you really go to analyze and break down a list of ingredients, this is the best example I have, is if we go with Clairol hair color, which everyone knows. The professional formula they sold at the beauty supply used pathanol as the conditioning agent, whereas in the box hair color, they used mineral oil. And just like what Mel was talking about with the toxins coming out of the skin, believe it or not, peroxide that everybody uses to color their hair builds up on the hair as well. So at an early point in my career in 1987, I got turned on to this enzyme developer, which was an advanced replacement for hydrogen peroxide. You would mix, measure, and apply the same way. The only difference was they had this secret ingredient in there, which was 9 oceanic plant enzymes. And by the early 90s, I had met the president of Trionics, and he's a sweet man. His name is Marvin LeBeau. And he came in as a financial investor in 1980 to his enzyme company, now called Trionics. It was called Anion. And what they did is they went right up against Redken. And they said, our developer's better than yours. And bam, they got their head cut off. And so when we talk about products today, the toughest thing about this for people to understand is that in the early days of the pushing of cosmetics, the product that actually filled the bottle might have cost 1 penny. The packaging might have cost 7 pennies. And it was sold for $1.50. And so now that really shows you what kind of markup there is. So in the 90s, what was so interesting was that the hairdressers started being blamed for professional use only products showing up in outlets. And so hairdressers were taken away from their art and their purpose and their choice of products in order to sell a particular product through. And as an independent salon owner, I had self-employed girls, so I did not force them to sell. It was never like that. But that was when I discovered how dirty my industry was, and that made me feel bad because it's really about the relationship with the other person. And so when you realize you're putting poison on someone, it makes you step back a minute and reevaluate your career, I guess. So, over the years, of course, I got in a little bit of trouble because I quit using the elite professional use only products that were full of the same poisons, the same paraben, the same propylene glycol, the same formaldehyde, which is now called DM hydantoin. They like to change names so people get confused. But I really started looking at health food store products and started reading labels. So one of the best books that I could suggest for anyone would be a book called What's in Your Cosmetics? And the author's name is Aubrey Hampton. Now, the story with him goes is he has his own line of products. He's considered the grandfather of natural, clean products. And he mixes every one of his different pieces in his line, shampoos, conditioner, styling aids. It's a small line. He mixes them in 50-gallon vats and packages them. So the biggest thing I could say to people too is surely back in the mid-90s, behind the chair as a stylist, I started seeing people with more skin conditions. The more the cell phones were up to the head, we were actually dealing with hair loss. And at that point, to really explain to people that if they want to stay well as they age, that maybe they should start counting the poisons that they were using, because most people see them in the food they eat or what they do recreationally or what they drink. But there's so many hidden poisons in our industry, and the hairdressing industry, the beauty industry, cosmetics, the whole umbrella is in the top 5 most toxic in the service industry. Now, the reason why we lag behind, because now here we are in 2016, and I could take you into the professional trade magazines, and I could show you a product that was clean, that you would pay maybe 3 times more for than what you would if you went to a health food store. And the truth is it costs too much to recalibrate their equipment. So that's where the money's tied up. In 2003, the first non-toxic hair color came to the United States. Now, where you ladies both are, believe it or not, your products were always cleaner than ours in the United States, and most people in the United States thought we had cleaner products. And that story goes back to the late 60s. But I have a list, and say where you're at, Alicia, in Australia, any poisonous compound in a cosmetic must be so designated on the product label. Phenylenediamine hair dyes are included under this regulation. So, Australia and Sweden always had, I would say, the more holistic lifestyles. And the Swiss hair dyes, unlike the American products, may not contain paraphenylenediamine or paranormal hydrate or pilocarpine. It's so hard to say these toxic chemicals. But they've had an ombudsman since 1971 who handles the complaints concerning the efficiency of the cosmetics. And he can summons the manufacturer to a hearing where the matter may be threshed out. So, as I was watching my client's health fail, and I was aging, As a holistic stylist, I started doing wellness seminars in 2005, and that's where I took the title holistic stylist. But a couple of things along the way that really helped me was the information on blood type and the foods that we eat, because of course our beauty does come from inside. It really isn't an external appendage that we can strap on and go about our walk. I kind of lost my track. I got a little far down the tunnel, but with all of these things, got it. Okay. So you learn to count poisons, and it's generally a 2 out of 10 poison rule. So we first look at the obvious, then we look at body care, then we look at thoughts. So I incorporated that. I also became a vegetarian, and I also quit drinking alcohol all at the same time. So a lot of people thought that was pretty extreme, but I think maybe that's why I'm aging comfortably. It's because I've always done a lot of bad things. I mean, I have to admit I'm an excessive girl, okay? But to reduce those things as we go along our walk, that's been a huge help to me. I also did every body cleanse in the book. The colon, the liver, the kidney, heavy metal, all of it. So that's my experience, Alicia, and being self-employed, I have never chosen to use products that can bring harm to my clientele. So some people get bent out of shape that I don't do perms or relaxers or use a straight iron, but we all get to choose what we do with our careers, and that's what I've done.
That you wouldn't use a straightening iron because you wouldn't put such a high temperature over your colors, which you took such a great care. It's the irony with looking after oneself. Suze, I have to make a comment too in regards to cell phone use.
Yes.
That's great. That is such an interesting thing that you proposed. You know, I found when I was using this mobile phone to my ear, I would have a little, almost like a blister or something around my temple. I tried different things. I tried iodine, coconut oil, tea tree oil, apple cider vinegar. I just blitzed it with all sorts of natural products that are edible, just to see what would heal it up. I mean, coconut oil is pretty much my staple moisturizer, and you know, everything. And it's really interesting that you know, you were mentioning just how many chemicals, you know, unpronounceable chemicals are in these common products, and how it's actually harder for you as well as a holistic stylist and hairdresser to access these other ingredients. And you know, often when there's ethical companies that are trying to supply, that the big chemical corporations will come and, you know, chop their heads off, as you said.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty scary. So how, you know, for example, like you've got lovely hair, a lovely hair color. Do you use a lot of henna products in your color application? Because that's a very natural product.
Well, that's a great question, and we have to go back and timeline henna, because henna, the original henna, had a metallic base. So back when ladies wore perms, if they would cross a henna and a perm, potentially the hair could smoke and burn off. So back in the day, that was a big deal. There was a product called Henna Lucent that came on the market that was made to be synchronistic with perms, and it was really more for gloss and shine. So now we talk about what's considered to be demi and semi-permanent colors, which are ammonia-free. Now, the permanent hair color that I use is also ammonia-free. Fireworks. Happy Independence Day, guys. So, the hardest thing about this in my heart is to have to tell people that the cosmetic industry uses the runoff and the waste from all the industrialized corporate things that are polluting our environment. So, yes, I mean, in the best world, they would make their own products, like what you were referring to earlier, you know, making beauty products. When people figure out how much they pay for packaging, that's very difficult for them. And I also think now that since we've lost our retail shopping that is local, well, now people understand the difference that the industry lived on for the years, which was a 200% markup. You know, when you start purchasing from wherever and it's shipped to you and there's no store, you pay less money as well. The hair color that I use is shipped from the UK, and it comes over on a boat into Florida, and then from Florida it's distributed out. So I became the first hair colorist in Missouri to use organic color systems in 2003, and there's 3 of us now in Missouri. One of the biggest problems, and I know Mel knows about this from L'Oreal, is that as these companies were gaining momentum and becoming bigger, supply houses, which is where people go to pick up their products, became less and less and were choked out, the smaller independents. So say here in Missouri, everybody uses OPI nail polish. OPI is the most toxic, just mess of a product that there is. Now there's a great line called Zoya that's formaldehyde and toluene free. It's just that you have to look a little more to find it. And then here again, isn't it heartbreaking to people when they don't really have time to investigate, and let's say they go to a health food store and they don't read a label and they come home with something natural that has also been adulterated, and then they lose their faith in the holistic movement. So
for me, why, at the very least, if it's not for the toxins, it's for the business practices that we absolutely have to boycott big beauty.
I agree. And I'm one of them. I mean, you know, a licensed cosmetologist, and it's very difficult. Like, the hardest thing now, I'll tell you the biggest one I'm facing, is when the clients come in and they are having a hard time dealing with the world at large. Of course, there's one thing that they can always control, and that's their hair, right? So if their hair feels a little different or if it looks a little different, they're asking me why. And then I have to share with them the truth about the water supply. And that's where really holistic, being a holistic stylist to me is entirely different than being a licensed cosmetologist. Sometimes I'm a little embarrassed of my industry, and it's tough to have to bring this information to people, as you ladies both know.
Yeah, and Suze, in your experience, did you have reps such as Mel's former job coming in, pushing products?
Well, sure, but okay, so like Mel knows, she's talked about Matrix. Let's just go with that. The only big professional beauty supply house that's left in St. Louis is one called State Beauty Supply. And so back in the early 90s, they used to have restrictions where a beauty supply house could only be, say, in a 4-state region. Well, then they kind of manipulated that, just like in the You Are Being Lied To book from the other day. And all they sold was Redken. Now, you girls both know me. And so having to tell them that I didn't want their poison or that I use enzymes and, all of those things, that put me on the outs with them years before. And actually, at one time, and see, now what we're really doing is we're talking about any small business. I'm 52. So when I started out in small business in the 80s, the me generation, which they call the 80s, and where all the deceit started, we didn't see it at first. I mean, because, it was just lovely being a business owner and having freedom and, feeling like we're doing something. So by the time that all this happened, I had already burned my bridges. And I call my things in from out of state. The enzymes are in New York. The hair color, like I said, comes from UK, comes over here. And now in the United States, there is 3 non-toxic hair color lines. So people are starting to get a variety to choose from. But the thing that most hairdressers do, to be real honest, is they're only going to use what they can purchase within a 10-minute drive. And so that changes that whole game entirely. And you got to remember always, I'm in the ghetto. So the people that have been my clients over the years would drive up to an hour away. Yeah, they love me or whatever, but more than anything, they couldn't get it anywhere else, and they know that. And that's what kept my clientele.
These days, though, it's Suze, with online purchasing of wholesale products, it makes it a little bit easier, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So,
I'm so excited that through the web page that Mel and Biggie are building, that I will be able to bring enzyme developers to the world and teach them how to use them and take them through training.
I'd love to introduce you to my hairdresser because although she's wonderful and she uses vegan and ammonia-free products, she hasn't mentioned the use of enzymes before. So
nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it. It was shut up and buried in 1980.
Yeah.
And, it's gotten really popular lately. And here's the reason why. All right, so when I was a young girl and all the beautiful ladies had their highlights, they used to call that frosting tip. And so they would paint the bleach on, right? And we know how aggressive bleach is. So, of course, these women's hair were almost straw-like, totally damaged. Well, what they have now that is all the rage is called betalage. And so all of that is painting bleach on somebody's hair all over again. And you want to talk about a nightmare from hell? Totally deprofessionalizes the industry, if you ask me. But all these hairdressers are jumping all over it, the trionics, because it doesn't damage the way peroxide does. So now everybody's painting bleach on the hair again. So whatever it takes. But the biggest difference with an enzyme, and of course I talked about that in my show on enzymes, a wonder and an embarrassment. A wonder because look at the difference. an embarrassment because they can't really explain it or duplicate it. So if you have to now argue with a hairdresser and say, hey, why don't you use that enzyme product? And they say, well, I mean, peroxide costs nothing. I don't want to pay 75 cents an ounce for something to develop my hair color. All I've been saying to people for years is, wow. I mean, I think any client or any hairdresser would invest 75 cents extra to do something that they have never been able to pull off before, which is healthy, shiny hair color. What they present. And so in 1998, I became a nationally board certified hair colorist, which the way they promoted it, which was beautiful, was to create a common language amongst hair colorists, and that it would not ever be funded by big business. So you couldn't endorse a particular brand. This was going to be a generic curriculum, right? And so when I studied to take this test, they actually had an experiment there where they compared the enzyme developer to the peroxide. And what they did was they decomposed the oxygen in the product. And so the more oxygen gas released, the more aggressive. And when they did this, the enzyme released less gas, but lightened the hair swatch better. Now, this is a big book that we studied out of, and that swatch was left to be judged wet or damp. And as you ladies both know, you never look at your hair color when it's wet because it will be different when it's dry. But it was obvious to the eye that the enzyme was superior. And so, you know, when I brought that up, they said, hey, that's great. Send us all your information. Let us know everything. And of course, why wouldn't I? I was the educator for the product, you know, research and development for Trionics. And after I sent those mailers out and samples and little hair swatches so they could do their experiments, they told me I better shut up or they'd take my certificate away. And that's a lifetime achievement award. You can't just take it away. But long story short, the gentleman that's the president of it, he can't be voted out. He's the one and the same. He always will be. And he's paid by L'Oreal. So, you know, I don't know if a lot of people understand that, Mel, that like, let's say, Halle Berry is endorsed by L'Oreal. Okay, so what that means is she has to use L'Oreal. But I promise you, she's in the salon getting it done. The way that they would market that in an advertisement, I remember when Heather Locklear used to be in her bathroom making her hair blonde. That was an awesome one. Right. And so what they do is they just give them all these free products and they become whores for that particular line. So the tragic thing now is in the States that probably 80% of our beauty schools are owned and operated and take their orders from the corporates. So I was asked one time to be on an advisory committee. You know, they were going to set up cosmetology at this place called Batterock College. And I said, y'all don't want me. And they go, yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I'm like, oh, you know, wait to hear what I have to say. And so, of course, I told them that they would be able to provide a much better education to these students if they kept it like old school, where you taught a generic curriculum and allowed these people to develop their self-confidence and to get out into the industry and know that they could use any product they want. All they have to do is research it and read some simple directions. But it it is a way to shove someone in the box, just like we see in every facet of every career industry. And so now when these people go through training for cosmetology, they learn one line and one line only. They believe everything they've been taught. And then they have to go out and work for a place like Great Clips or Supercuts where they get paid minimum wage. And there they are.
I want to make little comments on that, if I might. I think I'm feeling that with somewhere. Yeah, there we go. Mayor? Yeah, cool. One of the things I love about, one of the things I want to point out about the big corporate giants and what they do to the beauty industry, particularly beauty professionals. Now, let me just say, first off, the beauty professional is generally someone, I believe, much like, I've got loads of friends who are beauty therapists and massage therapists. That's just always been the kind of people that I always hung out with. These people are like doctors. Sometimes they get into beauty because it's the way they find in which they can help people. Like, doctors get into medicine not because they want to push mainstream medicine or big pharma, but because they genuinely want to help people, and maybe pharmaceutical medicine is the only way they can do it. And this, for me, is what is the saddest, is you've got these beautiful people who get into this kind of work because they genuinely want to help people in whatever way that is, be it an ailment, be it caring for their external locus of identity, helping them feel better about their self-confidence, providing a therapy. You both understand what all of that is about. So here comes along big corporate giants, say L'Oreal. Worked for them. I was one of their corporate stooges. I managed all the key accounts of the celebrity hairdressers across London, plus was responsible for bringing in new business across London for the L'Oreal range. And how they would do this, it was so aggressive. And I watched hairdressers lose their entire salons to these big corporate giants, because what they'd do is, account manager would walk into, say, salon A and talk to them, and they'd get all excited. You'd show them the lovely product range, show them what we can do, tell them why what they've got is inferior, tell them why we've got is superior, and then tell them that if they take our range, we'd help them refurbish their salon and throw a whole bunch of money at them. And that means that they have to take a certain amount of your range every month to help cover off the loan that you've given them to finance their salon. So there would have to be a certain amount of product bought every month. The problem here is, like you rightly said, hairdressers are not salespeople. And this meant that all the hairdressers had to be trained up in, every time a client sat down, oh, would you like a shampoo for that hair color? We recommend this and this and this, and maybe you want a wax, and you try to put as much in front of them as possible in terms of retail sales. And I've sat in a hairdressing chair where you've had that pushy hairdresser who wants to just sell you everything you don't frickin' want. And I'm just like, yeah, that's nice, thank you, honey, just get on with what you're doing. And I hate it when people do that to me. And yet here I was as, a corporate rep for the big boys, L'Oreal, going in there and training hairdressers to do that very thing to clients. Okay, and I freaking hated it when hairdressers did that to me. So acutely aware of, yes, we're pushing the corporate side of things. We're taking away the artistry from the hairdressing industry, and artistry is very much backed and funded by a big industry. If you've been to any of these L'Oreal Colour Trophy and big hair shows, you know exactly what I mean by that kind of thing. These trade shows and whatnot, all controlled by big corporate beauty business. But the thing about these salons were, okay, once they'd given these hairdressers all this money and the products in, and perhaps the products weren't selling fast enough, so the hairdressers weren't putting in orders to L'Oreal and keeping up their end of the contract, L'Oreal would just come in and take their salon. And at one point, when I was working there, L'Oreal Professional Products owned 60% of the salons in London through this process. And when I was working there, one of the hardest things for me to have to witness, I mean, there was this one hairdressing salon by Andrew, I'll never forget it. This hairdresser had been in the family for 3 generations since the war. It had been passed down from her grandmother to her mother, and now this woman, Andrea, had 3 kids, and her husband was a shop fitter, and it was a real sweetie Betty, grey, purple rinses and perms, not a high-end West End salon. It was more East End. But It had been in her family for 3 generations, and she got very excited the day I walked in there, and I threw a whole bunch of L'Oreal products at her, including a whole bunch of perfumes and stuff, which had nothing to do with what she did. I basically bought her. Okay, I bought her with poisons. This is what I did. Gave her a whole bunch of bottled poisons at her. She was very happy, decided to do the deal, and couldn't keep up with selling the products through because it was never that kind of salon. It was never that kind of salon that sold high-end, expensive retail. And she ended up losing her salon. Even a year after I left L'Oreal, this woman would call me up drunk, crying to me about what I'd done to her, you know. And I know I was the one who walked in there, and I got her to sign that deal, and I was the corporate stooge who got that salon taken away from her. And I know what I was a part of as big business and how we damaged lives. So I'm very aware of, what it is we do, but also, thinking back and going, look at that salary that I was paid. Was it really worth the damage that we've done to people to get that small amount of commission that we used to get from the work that we did? And I wonder how many of those account managers and reps, and let me just say, L'Oreal's, they turned around their reps and salespeople very fast. They never lasted more than a year and a half to 2 years at a time because of just how pressured these people were to make money. We were put under so much pressure it was like, okay, Matrix has to grow by 30% this year, come hell or high water, it's going to go by 30% this year, and we don't care what you do to bring that business in. It was like, you wine and dine your clients, you do what you have to, you bribe, even if there was cannibalizing from within the professional products industry, like, for example, a salon already had L'Oreal Redken or Pure Stars in it, which is a L'Oreal-owned brand. Like, we would go in there as the Matrix reps and go, okay, well, we want our brand in there, so we get rid of all the L'Oreal brands, put our brand in there, but it's the same bloody company. We're self-cannibalizing. Okay, that is how greedy we were. That is how they pushed us. And it's not like I was greedy. It was like I was forced to be greedy on their behalf because that is how they grew by 30% year on year. And the guy, the only person who benefited was the general manager of the division. Because guess what? At the end of the year, he was the one who was given the job for having raised the volume or the turnover by 30% year on year. He was the one who was given the new job as head of professional products in North America. And then again, head of professional products, he went on to be head of professional products Spain. It is him that got all the benefit out of us, not the reps. We got strung out, and thankfully, I left and went on to do natural products, and they were scouted as a model whilst I was working at L'Oreal. 6 months later, I started modeling in London, doing plus size modeling. And then I went into media and all that kind of thing. So it was quite an event, digression from that point, but became acutely aware, leaving L'Oreal, when I gave up the corporate, like I would never, after that, I decided that was my last time working in that capacity as a slave for a corporation, working for the biggest company of its kind like that, and being just one of many. Like, if I had to call human resources, I couldn't give them my name. I had a number. I had to read them. Okay, and only then could they deal with me, was by my number. I had a number. I was just another number to them. And this is part of my awakening process, where I began to realize I do not want to be a cog in the little corporate, just a little cog in a big corporate machine where they don't care if this little one piece gets burnt out. They'll just replace it with another piece.
We took such a great, great care to put that colour in the hair, and that would be lifting the follicles apart, and the colour would be falling out, and they'd be paled up in the next wash.
Correct.
Yeah, so I can understand that. My particular hairdresser, Beck, who I love, and if she's watching, I love you, Beck. Thank you for doing my hair. She uses ammonia-free products.
Nice.
So organic and vegan products as much as possible. And she used to have a salon, but now she's rent a chair. Because she's also teaching in hairdressing college, and she brings that natural philosophy in as well. And I really like this, holistic approach to hairdressing and to beauty and to wellness as well.
Yes, and this is the irony of the whole thing is that they spend so much money on the con and the illusion of the product, okay, more so than the actual product itself. One of the other things I want to talk about the corruption of big corporate beauty giants. Now, obviously, working for L'Oreal, one of the things that I got to attend was something called the Beauty Benevolent Ball. Now, let me explain to you what this little guy is. I thought, "Oh, I'm big stuff. I get to go to the Beauty Benevolent Ball. I got given a clothing allowance to go and, get myself a nice dress and everything. And I get to hang out with all the celebrities because to this ball, they invite Halle Berry, Charlize Theron, all the people who are L'Oreal, do the L'Oreal adverts. That's, of course, wasn't around when I was working there. But all the famous people who wear L'Oreal products come to this ball. And this is how they get people to pay $200 a plate per person, or however much the tickets were. I don't remember. I didn't pay for mine. I was given mine. But they hold this ball, and what it is, it's a fundraiser. They get people to buy these tickets on the basis that all the L'Oreal celebrities will be there, and you forget what it's really all about. It's a beauty benevolent ball. It's a benevolent fund for beauticians and hairdressers, okay, who are damaged by the chemicals of the industry. So they actually have a fund where they raise money, okay, to help those people that they damage with their products. And it's like a big glamorous thing. No one questions. And you sit there at the table and they do this massive presentation about, oh, this hairdresser became, her hands, she could no longer use them, and this is what the Beauty Benevolent Fund did for her, and they show this beautiful big house with kids running around all happy and stuff, and it's amazing how they spin the PR and just how pernicious it is. So they're very well aware that they're damaging people. And then they get their celebrity faces that they pay millions of dollars to advertise their products to come to the ball so that other people can buy the plates that need to be bought to raise the funds to pay for the hairdressers that they damage with their products.
Right.
And this is craziness. You start looking at all this and you start going, wow, they are clearly aware of what they're doing. They are calculated, okay, because why would they be having a counteract measure if they weren't fully aware of what was in their stuff? This is the whole point of having the Beauty Benevolent Ball. It's for people that they damage. So there is a very conscious awareness of the stuff that's in their products, very conscious of what they're doing, very conscious that there are going to be some people who are going to be damaged, so we better make sure we look after them so it's good for our PR, we do not get sued. That's what it's all about. And all the people who get paid millions as their faces of the products are all conspiring and participating in this, knowingly or unknowingly. Very sad.